In the vast and arid landscape of Arizona, an armored cash transport simply vanished, along with the 2 couriers assigned to it. The disappearance left law enforcement baffled. Were these men the perpetrators, or had they fallen victim to a well-planned ambush? The truth lay hidden somewhere in the remote northwest of the state, buried beneath layers of mystery. FBI investigators found themselves piecing together scattered fragments of evidence, each tiny clue potentially holding the key to the real story. On May 24, 1977, in Phoenix, Arizona, employees at a cash transport company carefully transferred $333,000 in cash from a secure vault into an armored truck. The 2 couriers, Cecil Newkirk and Russell Dempsey, prepared to embark on their routine delivery route. Everything set? One of them asked, checking the vehicle before departure. "Hold up," the other responded. "Something's wrong with the door handle." A quick inspection revealed a mechanical issue with the side door of the truck. Instead of taking a risk, the men waited for repairs before heading out. This delay pushed their schedule back by an hour, a seemingly small setback, but one that would later prove significant. The route they were assigned that day stretched from Phoenix to Flagstaff, nearly 200 kilometers north. As time passed, their expected stops along the way began falling behind schedule. At around 10:30 a.m., one of the banks on their route called in, reporting that their expected cash delivery had not arrived. "We had some mechanical trouble." The dispatcher responded. They should be on their way soon. At first, the delay seemed nothing more than an inconvenience. But as the hours passed with no sign of the couriers, concern began to mount. The dispatcher attempted to reach the men over the radio, but received no response. By 4:30 p.m., the company could no longer ignore the unsettling silence. They notified the FBI, and within hours, an alert was issued to all law enforcement agencies in the area. As evening fell, officers across multiple departments scoured the highways and surrounding desert, searching for the missing truck and its crew. But there was nothing, no sign of the armored vehicle, no sign of the men. The silence was absolute. The morning after the couriers vanished, Arizona State Police launched an aerial search along the truck's route, using helicopters to scan the Interstate 17 and the surrounding terrain. The hope was to spot the missing vehicle or any signs of an accident. Roughly 80 kilometers north of Phoenix, near the small town of Bumblebee, pilots spotted something, a large, abandoned vehicle sitting about 400 meters off the main road. As they flew lower, they confirmed it was the missing armored truck. Authorities rushed the site and immediately cordoned off the area. When the FBI agents arrived, they approached the vehicle cautiously, not wanting to disturb any crucial evidence. From the outside, everything seemed eerily intact. The doors were shut, and there were no immediate signs of a struggle. "It doesn't look like there was any kind of fight inside," one of the agents observed. "But we won't know for sure until we check inside." The team had to wait for replacement keys to arrive before they could open the vehicle. Once they gained access, the findings inside only deepened the mystery. The radio was still switched on, yet no distress calls had been made. The security alarm had never been triggered. And most concerning of all, the shotgun kept in the truck for emergencies had not been used, suggesting that, if something had gone wrong, the couriers never even had the chance to fight back. In the storage compartment, agents found several sacks of coins worth thousands of dollars. But $293,000 in banknotes had vanished without a trace. Then came the most alarming discovery. Blood. Small splashes of blood stained the truck's floor and some of the remaining money bags. Someone had been injured, but with no bodies in sight, the courier's fate remained uncertain. "Our priority wasn't the money," one FBI agent later explained. "Cash can be replaced. Lives can't. Our biggest fear was that these men had been taken against their will or worse." Outside the truck, investigators found footprints in the sand, not just from the couriers, but from at least 2 other individuals. Nearby, they also discovered a second set of tire tracks leading away from the scene. Forensic specialists documented everything, taking photographs and making plaster casts of the tire impressions. "This wasn't some random attack," one agent muttered. "This was planned, and more than one person was involved." As law enforcement processed the crime scene, they knew one thing for certain. Whoever had taken the money hadn't acted alone. And more disturbingly, neither of the missing couriers was anywhere to be found. With no sign of the missing couriers, the FBI turned to the public for help. Investigators released details about the missing truck and urged anyone who might have seen something suspicious to come forward. The strategy worked. Within days, several eyewitnesses reported seeing the armored truck stop along Interstate 17 on the morning of May 24, 1977. One particularly credible witness described a man in a uniform, possibly a police officer, approaching the truck. Others recalled a vehicle parked nearby, though their descriptions of the make and color varied. Some claimed the car had been in front of the truck, while others said it had been parked behind it. To verify the reports, the FBI contacted the Arizona Department of Public Safety, DPS, the state's highway patrol agency. If an officer had conducted a routine stop that morning, it would be on record. But the DPS had no such report. None of their officers had pulled over an armored truck that day. That revelation sent a chill through the investigators. If it was an actual officer, one agent said, then someone impersonated law enforcement to pull off this heist. With that in mind, the FBI focused their search on a location where witnesses claimed the truck had been stopped. A train tracker was brought in, one of the best in the state, with a reputation for reading footprints and tire tracks like a book. His findings were both precise and disturbing. The ground bore clear signs of a struggle, marks in the dirt indicating that someone had been forced down or restrained near the rear of the truck. And then there were the tire tracks. The expert confirmed that the same vehicle that had been at the highway stop was also present at the remote site in Bumblebee where the truck had been abandoned. The FBI's theory solidified. 1. The truck had been forced to pull over by someone posing as an officer. 2. The couriers had been subdued and taken. 3. The truck had then been driven to a remote site before being abandoned. The question now wasn't what happened, but who did it and where the couriers had been taken. Then, on the morning of June 16, 1977, nearly 3 weeks later, the investigation took a grim turn. 2 fishermen, casting their lines into the Lake Mead Reservoir, spotted something floating in the water. As they got closer, they realized it wasn't debris. It was a body. The fishermen immediately contacted the authorities, and within hours, a team of National Park Service divers arrived at Lake Mead to recover the body. As they pulled it from the water, they made a grim discovery. The head and upper torso were covered with a fabric sack, a disturbing sign that whoever had disposed of the body had wanted to conceal the victim's identity. A quick search of the clothing provided the first major clue. In the back pocket of the victim's pants, officers found a wallet. Inside was a driver's license. The body was identified as Russell Dempsey, one of the 2 missing armored truck couriers. With new urgency, divers expanded their search. Though they found no trace of Cecil Newkirk, they did recover an odd object tangled in some underwater debris, a makeshift garrote crafted from a length of rope with 2 wooden handles. The discovery turned the case into something far more sinister. This wasn't just a robbery, one investigator said. It was an execution. An autopsy later confirmed their worst fears. Dempsey had died from strangulation, likely with the same garrote found near his body. The medical examiner also noted signs of a heart attack, which may have occurred as he was being choked. A strand of his hair was found caught in the weapon's twisted fibers, confirming it had been used on him. Now, it was no longer just about missing money. This was a murder investigation. The FBI intensified its search around Lake Mead, focusing on marinas and boat rental services. Agents canvassed the area, questioning employees and checking rental logs. At first, it seemed like a dead end. No one recalled anything unusual. But as they sifted through paperwork, agents uncovered receipts from boat rentals near the time of the murder. A name stood out: Michael Poland. One of the receipts showed that a boat had been rented under this name the day after the heist, and it had been returned hours later at Bonelli Landing, a location uncomfortably close to where Dempsey's body was found. Then, another lead surfaced. An Arizona tow truck operator came forward with an unusual story. The day after the armored truck heist, he had been called to Lake Mead to retrieve a pickup truck that had mysteriously rolled into the water. The men who requested the tow claimed they had been drinking and accidentally backed too close to the edge while fishing. But the tow truck driver found something strange. The bed of the pickup had clear drag marks, as if something heavy had been pulled out and dumped before the truck slipped into the water. One of the men signed a receipt for the tow service. The name? Michael Pollan. For the first time, the FBI had a suspect. But was he working alone? And where was the second missing courier? With Michael Pollan now a primary suspect, the FBI intensified its efforts to track his movements. Investigators soon discovered that he wasn't acting alone. His younger brother, Patrick Pollan, had also been heavily spending money in the weeks after the heist. Though both men claimed to be unemployed, they had recently purchased new vehicles, motorcycles, and expensive household items. Something wasn't adding up, an investigator noted. They went from broke to big spenders practically overnight. A deeper dive into their financial history confirmed it. Before May 24, 1977, both Michael and Patrick had been in serious debt. Shortly after the heist, their financial troubles seemed to disappear. This was the break the FBI needed. Agents began monitoring the Pollan brothers around the clock, looking for any connections to the stolen money or the missing second courier, Cecil Newkirk. Then came the next breakthrough. One of the FBI's forensic analysts was carefully examining evidence recovered from Lake Mead when he noticed something unusual about the fabric sacks found near Dempsey's body. These weren't ordinary storage bags. They had been custom-made with a distinct stitching pattern. Investigators combed through dozens of manufacturers in the Phoenix area before finally finding a match. The owner of the company confirmed. The exact same fabric and stitching pattern had been used for a custom order just 1 month before the heist. The order was for 3 sacks, made to specific dimensions. The name on the purchase receipt? Mark Harris. This name had appeared once before, in a receipt for an electric stun gun bought before the robbery and later discovered in Michael Pollan's home. That was enough for investigators. Mark Harris wasn't a real person. He was an alias, and they were now 100% certain that Michael Pollan had used it to purchase the materials needed to carry out the robbery and murders. With this new evidence, the FBI obtained warrants for both Pollan brothers on May 17, 1978. But agents weren't taking any chances. These men had already murdered 2 people. One agent said, "We weren't about to give them a chance to kill again." They prepared for the worst, arming themselves with bulletproof vests and heavy weaponry, expecting a possible shootout. Instead, when Patrick Pollan was confronted outside a business he owned, he surrendered immediately. Moments later, a second team arrested Michael Pollan in a real estate office, where he had been meeting with an associate. Both men were now in custody. But would the evidence be enough to convict them of murder? With Michael and Patrick Pollan in custody, the FBI prepared for trial. But they faced a challenge. There were no fingerprints, no eyewitnesses to the actual murders, and no direct evidence linking the brothers to the crime scene. The case would rely on circumstantial evidence. The fabric sacks found at Lake Mead, which had been custom ordered under Michael Pollan's alias. The stun gun purchase, also linked to the same fake name. The tow truck driver's testimony, confirming that Michael had signed for the vehicle that had been pulled from Lake Mead, right where the first victim's body was found. The sudden influx of wealth, despite both brothers being unemployed. The financial records proving their debts were erased right after the heist. It was enough. In February 1979, the Pollan brothers were convicted in federal court on charges of armed robbery and kidnapping and sentenced to 100 years in prison. But that wasn't enough for the state of Arizona. Later that year, a state jury convicted them both of murder. The judge handed down death sentences. However, the case wasn't over yet. The brothers appealed, and in a shocking decision, the Arizona Supreme Court overturned their death sentences, citing errors in the trial, including the use of hypnosis-based testimony and some improperly admitted evidence. This ruling meant that, despite overwhelming evidence, the Pollan brothers could become eligible for parole within just 7 years. The FBI and prosecutors were stunned. These men brutally murdered 2 innocent people. One prosecutor later said, "They shouldn't be walking free after a few years behind bars." Determined to stop that from happening, a new prosecutor, Melvin McDonald, took over the case and pushed for a second murder trial, something that had never been done before on a federal to state level. To strengthen their case, the FBI went back to one crucial piece of evidence: the wristwatch of Cecil Newkirk, the second courier. When Newkirk's body was recovered from Lake Mead, his automatic wristwatch had stopped at exactly 10:37 p.m. on May 26, 1977, 2 days after the heist. Why did this matter? Because automatic watches continue to run for 12 hours after their last movement. That meant Newkirk had been thrown into the water around 10:30 a.m. on May 26, and at that exact time, Michael and Patrick Poland were confirmed to be in the Lake Mead area. It was the missing link. MacDonald argued to the jury. This man's watch speaks from beyond the grave. It tells us when he died, and it tells us who was there when it happened. The jury was convinced. On November 18, 1982, the Poland brothers were convicted of murder again and sentenced to death once more. This time, their appeals failed. On June 16, 1999, Michael Poland was executed by lethal injection. 9 months later, on March 15, 2000, Patrick Poland met the same fate. In his final moments, Patrick expressed remorse for his crimes, something Michael never did. With their executions, the case was finally closed. 2 innocent couriers had lost their lives, but justice had prevailed. The lesson? Even the most carefully planned crimes leave traces behind. And no matter how long it takes, the truth always finds a way to surface.